Okay, we are live and recording. Welcome to your March Hope meeting and welcome back everybody. This is the first meeting of 2024. And there'll be an opportunity to acknowledge your new board members. But first, let me go ahead and pull up your agenda today and get your meeting started. Give me 1 second, folks. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see this. Carol Butcher, I can see you. So would you give me a verbal yes, you can see the screen at home just fine?
Yes, I can see the screen at home.
And today the meeting is facilitated by myself and Rebecca Taylor. We're part of the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. For virtual housekeeping, please, if you can remain muted unless it's your turn to talk. You can also stop sharing your camera if you'd like to. If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat area and there'll be an opportunity for public comment right after I go over the agenda. Please type your name and that you want to make a public comment into the chat, and here in the room, I'll give an opportunity too if there's somebody who wants to make a public comment. Just a reminder about the agreements of the culture for the Hope Advisory Board. These were written up on a whiteboard over 4 years ago with about 21 original Hope board members wanting to make sure that this place was inclusive and open-minded and curious and kind. So I remind anybody who's joining that this is the culture of this board.
I can join when necessary.
Give me just a sec to make sure that we've got anybody in the lobby able to join. Okay, we do. Thanks for your patience, folks. Okay, so the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, Rebecca and my staff positions, and Libby Lowski-Winter, our grant writer, we are part of our health department. But the Coordinated Homeless Response System includes these 4 entities. So Benton County, the City of Corvallis, Community Services Consortium is that CSC, and the City of Philomath, who is now joining this journey with us. And then the Hope Board and the Hope Executive Committee, they have representation from all 4 of these entities and the highest staff members from these 4 entities. So just wanting to make it really clear that we are all a part of this Coordinated Homeless Response System, while our staff positions with the office are within the health department. Your agenda today, after public comment, if there is any, we'll have some housekeeping and approval of the notes from December. And then we're going to dive right into your work plan for 2024 as a Hope Board. We will spend the majority of the time today sharing an update with you about House Bill 5019, the rapid rehousing funding, and work that we have been doing for the past 5 to 6 months on the flexible housing subsidy pool, and then hearing all of your feedback. It's really vital that the Hope Board, as the community engagement arm of our Coordinated Homeless Response System, can give feedback on this while it develops. And then we have a couple of community progress updates near the end. Okay, is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? I'm going to go ahead and check in with the chat for just a second. We'll stop sharing. I am not seeing anything in the chat. Is there anyone who has called in on the phone who wants to make a public comment? I'm also saying nothing as far as somebody who's called in here in the room. Folks who are not a part of the Hope Advisory Board, did you have a public comment? No? Okay. Oh, would you like to?
I don't know if there's an announcement section, but I will say so. Alicia Bublitz, she, her, hers with IHNCCO. I have spoken to many of you already, but as Oregon's Medicaid ramps up our housing benefits for our members, there is capacity building funds available, and I am your contact person for that. So please do feel free to reach out if you would like some more information about those capacity building funds for becoming an Medicaid provider of housing benefits. And I will jot an email down for you to put in the chat.
Sure, thank you so much. All right, we will end public comment time. My mouse will come back. And I'll go ahead and share once more. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Here we are. All right. So I sent out the December meeting minutes last week to give you all an opportunity to review them. There are quite a few of you who were not part of the whole board last year, and so you can abstain. It's also the way that we take roll call. But first, are there any edits or additions to the minutes from December 2023? And you can go ahead and jump right in and take yourself off mute if any of our whole board members have any changes. Okay, hearing no changes, we need a motion to approve your December 2023 minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Rachel McNeely makes the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Jessica Andrade seconds the motion. I'm going to go ahead and go through your board member names. Please vote yes or no on the meeting approval or abstain if you were not at the December meeting. Councilor Andrade.
Abstain.
Thank you. Carol.
Approved.
Alice. Alice. Ricardo. Okay, Brian is excused. Cade. Sarah.
Abstain.
Anita.
Approved.
Matt.
Approved.
Joel is excused. All right, I thought I saw you here, but I didn't see you.
Here and abstain.
Thank you. Barbara.
Here, and Julie, your mic keeps fading out on us for the folks on the line.
Does it? Can you hear me now?
I can, but it goes soft and then it gets loud.
All right, we will try to project our voices in the room.
Thank you.
Bria. Rachel.
Approved.
Peggy. And I got a text from Peggy saying she would be running late, so she probably hasn't joined yet. Andrea.
Abstain.
Ilea is excused. She had a last minute work emergency. Mark. Chris. Chris is excused, but I thought I saw you join. Chris, are you with us? And Nancy is excused as well. Okay. Let me continue. We have some Hope Board member changes this year. Aaron Lewis has moved to Portland, so he no longer resides in Benton County, but he's still working on housing. So I wished him the best of luck. Catherine Bisco has had to step down from the board. And there are openings for a co-chair. So if you're interested in being a co-chair of the Hope Board, please reach out to me. And then we have some new additions, Jessica, Rachel, Mark, and Chris. And so I will go ahead and stop screen sharing so that we can see everybody. I'm gonna give this screen a second to catch up. Well, let's start with you, Rachel. Can folks at home see? Yes, they can.
Hi, I'm Rachel McEnany. I'm the Benton County Administrator, and I'm just hitting my 6th month in this position. I'm really excited to be here. And what else you want me to tell you? That's good? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And Councilor Andrade.
My name is Jessica Andrade. I'm a former city councilor, from she today.
Thank you. And I thought that I saw Chris Workman join. Chris, how's your audio today? Can you introduce yourself? All right. Give me just a second, folks. Great, now we can see everybody. Mark Shepherd, I don't see you here, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. We will go ahead and kick off the other content we have today. And Alice, I see that you have joined. Paula, if you could note that Alice Carter is here. So your work plan as the HOPE board, the HOPE Executive Committee looked at the work that staff are doing and the role of the HOPE Advisory Board and made the decision that was recommended from the staff level to have you all meet 4 times a year, just quarterly. So March will be your winter one, and it's a month or so late. May will be the spring one, August will be summer, and October will be fall. And as our community engagement body for our homeless response system, your role really as an incredible forum for community engagement, stakeholder impact, and to liaise between all of the member governments and our different aspects and parts of our community. And then very important at the staff level too is to give your input as we develop programs. You have an incredible wealth of knowledge and expertise, and we want your ideas and input. So this meeting today, we're going to give you an overview of what's on the horizon for the rest of the year. We'll be talking mostly about the flexible housing subsidy pool. We call it FHSP or the flex pool, and how it aligns with your HOPE recommendations and the work that we're doing to implement those HOPE recommendations through this flex pool. We'll come back in May because a lot of this is flying the plane while we build it, and we are doing program development right now. So we'll have progress to bring back to you in May, and it'll be an in-depth opportunity to give feedback on this flex pool. Alice, I think I can see that your mic is unmuted. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what do you want?
If you could mute your mic, Alice, that would be helpful.
Okay, let me see if I can do that.
Thank you. You did. Perfect. In August, we'll come back for a final community input and engagement session on the flexible housing subsidy pool. Quite a few of the components should be built by then, we're hoping. And then in October, we will return with a severe weather emergency response plan update. We learned a lot from the ice storm and from the input from our community partners and providers. So a lot of work is going in right now to improve that plan. And this will be a great forum to bring it back and get input. We'll also be seeking input from HOPE board members to volunteer for smaller work groups. For example, with our flexible housing subsidy pool and a NOFO, we need members on a review committee and participation from people who have experienced homelessness personally. And so I'll be reaching out to board members, asking for volunteers for smaller group work.
What is NOFO?
Thank you for asking. I should have spelled that out. Notice of funding opportunity. It means that the county has some funds to deploy, and they're asking for people's applications to get those funds out into the community. So it's a notice there's a funding opportunity. Thank you, Carol. All right, so this is our community engagement session with you all. We're going to take you on a journey to tell the story of how far we've come, how your community input has shaped the work that we are doing right now and what we're building. So we're going to start with a rapid rehousing update because it formed the basis of why we pursued a flexible housing subsidy pool. My name's Julie Arena. I'm a program coordinator. I use she, her pronouns. And
Rebecca Taylor, project manager, she, her pronouns.
And I will go ahead and pass it off to you. And you can list, guys. Paula, can I ask if you see anything in the chat that's a question that you say something verbally and we will stop screen sharing because I can't see all of the participants of the meeting.
Okay, Julie, I'll keep an eye out.
Thank you so much.
Right, so we've actually come to you with a little bit of this information over the last year. However, we thought it'd be helpful to just give a quick overview of House Bill 5019 and the how we've arrived to where we are today. So, and some of us tying in today, this is the first time you may be hearing about this. So the governor declared a state of emergency due to homelessness throughout the state of Oregon. It didn't originally include some of our more rural communities, and later through advocacy and support through our leadership and other leadership from our rural counties, they included means to support the homelessness response in Benton County and other rural counties. And so part of our ability to participate in the initiatives at the state level to respond to that emergency of homelessness was basically getting assigned a certain number of households that would need to be rehoused by June 30th, 2025. And that number was developed based on data and statistics and different things like that for our community. And the funding opportunity too was based on the overarching allocation. It was about 26 million that the state allocated for the areas outside of the original emergency areas. So what was required of OHCS, Oregon Housing Community Services, for communities participating in this was to develop a local planning group that would guide the development of a community plan to meet the goals that were assigned by OHCS, to utilize funds to rehouse for us in Benton County 31 households. As part of our local planning group process, we convened meetings on July 12th and July 19th with many different people, including representatives of the H.O.P.E Advisory Board, direct service providers, culturally responsive and specific organizations throughout Benton County and our Tri-County area to inform the development of our community plan. Yes, and then as a result of that, one of the specific items that was identified in that engagement was an opportunity to engage property managers and property owners, because one of the clear gaps or barriers in rehousing people in Benton County and throughout the state of Oregon is available units. So I think I'm passing it to you on this.
I can do this one.
Okay.
So we pulled together an incredible group of folks last summer and asked key questions. What are the populations most likely to experience unsheltered homelessness, and what are the factors that are contributing to them becoming homeless? And then for those subpopulations, what are you seeing out there, community partners? What are the top barriers that are keeping folks to get into housing? And what specific barriers for those subpopulations in getting housing? Because there are different barriers for different folks. We learned a lot from our community partners because we didn't want to just do research on our own. We wanted to hear it straight from folks who are out there helping people transition out of homelessness. So the overrepresented groups in our local data match and support what we heard directly from our community partners and providers, that our Black community and our Native American communities are overrepresented in our local data, where they should be about 1% of our unhoused population. They're anywhere from 8 to 13%, extremely overrepresented. Families with children are overrepresented, but not well captured in our data. They're doubling up, they are staying in friends' garages that are not meant for human habitation, and they are flying below the data radar, but our providers are seeing them overwhelmingly, and not just families with one kid or two, but lots of children. And then high and complex needs, and very similar to that fourth bullet point, high needs and then not qualifying for a specific program. So even though if you have high and complex needs, you might qualify for one program, but not for all the rest of your needs. Or you don't qualify for everything that you need help with. This part, you want me to?
Sure. All right. So with those two large planning group meetings, in addition to some smaller focus meetings, we identified specific strategies to address the barriers to rehousing our community for the subpopulations that we identified. And those include peer supports representative of the overrepresented groups. So really relying on the expertise we have in our community through our culturally responsive and specific organizations. Also the need for intensive supportive services. We talked about the complex high needs, but don't necessarily meet the level of criteria to participate in the existing programs, but still needing a level of case management support throughout their entire journey of gaining and regaining housing. again, on that culturally responsive and intensive housing navigation, both from a peer support and right fit placement, it is feeling inclusivity and belonging in the community and the services that people are accessing throughout their journey to housing. Engagement and incentives for property managers and owners. We talked about that just a little bit ago about opening up access to actual units in our community. We understand that is a huge barrier. So we need to be able to identify where we can access the existing housing stock in our community. So having that strong engagement and partnership with our private landlords and property managers. Also, understanding interim solutions are key. We understand rapid rehousing and getting people into housing is our ultimate goal, but we understand that there may be stepping stones along that path. And so making sure that we have a strong system in place that helps people navigate out of unsheltered homelessness. And so in addition to those local planning group meetings, we also distributed a survey to be able to prepare for the limited time that we accessed our community and make sure that we had meaningful conversations. And we gathered a few, specific qualitative data points from our community about what they are seeing and challenges in being able to provide housing for people. And a lot of it is not being aware of where to access those, basically what our continued care and OHCS is calling barrier busters, like those one-off expenses that require really flexible funding, but really are the difference between successfully getting somebody into housing. And then also finding units that are appropriate for the household size and within the cost available or the rental subsidy available to them. So do you want me to take this on?
Yes,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
okay.
doing these, but I can flash.
Yes, okay, so really, so we took a lot of time and care into talking with our service providers about the day-to-day barriers that they are seeing getting people into housing, and really trying to understand what our current strategies are, both from those individual operational components, but also on a systems level. And so we understand we have a really strong network of shelters in our community. We have supportive housing development underway and existing, and we have supportive services. And really understanding, okay, inventorying those, where do we see potential barriers in the system that the Coordinated Homeless Response Office through the local planning groups support, identify those system level barriers where we can come in and hopefully fill those gaps. And so we identified, generally speaking, inflexible funding, the regulatory framework that is attached to many of our funding sources make it difficult to have that rapid response when somebody is in a crisis need to either maintain their housing or access the rare opportunity that a housing opportunity comes up in our community. So in addition to that is often because of that inflexibility of funding, we see insufficient funding or a scarcity mindset in the sense that we are not able to necessarily put together the complex funding plan to be able to support people's housing. I see there is a sign.
There's a question from Carol. Is it a clarification one, Carol?
Well, I'm curious if in doing all of the one of the concerns I've heard is that a lot of the community doesn't understand what the issues are and what's being done. And so I'm asking if in doing the outreach to these pretty large, I mean, quite a few people, groups, do you feel like you're informing the community as a whole what the issues are and what is being done to address them?
I think that's what this meeting is for. So this meeting is the first step of what the issues are and what we're doing to address them. But we also want to accompany that with some communications that go out. So we've had some press releases go out and emails. But I think I'd love more feedback on how we can better communicate this and answer questions. But that'll come after we present all this, Carol. Does that sound good?
Well, except you said that in order to get the beginning of a plan, you did a lot of outreach to people, and you said, what are the barriers? What can we do? So I'm assuming you already contacted, were those mostly service providers then?
Those are people who know what the barriers are to help
Okay.
folks.
Got it.
So
Okay,
wide net, not just people working in shelter.
right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And there'll be an opportunity for more feedback like that once we're done too.
All right. Thank you. And so in addition, this is kind of a misnomer, but need more housing to house first. So as we're implementing best practices, we need to make sure we have the resources to do that. Silos, we hear that frequently in all different kinds of, community services, how we can better serve our communities, breaking down those silos. In the case of inflexible funding, often or insufficient funding, it can be because of the complexity in each of the systems and having a challenging time getting those systems to communicate with each other because of the complexity. Also, timelines for permanent supportive housing development, knowing we have a need now, how can we address the interim solution of meeting the obligations we have to our community and meeting our values and mission statement as a HOPE advisory board as far as getting those housing opportunities in our community, but also meeting the objectives for the obligations we have to OHCS as our funder.
What did you say that the P was?
Oh, permanent supportive housing.
Permanent.
I'm gonna do an acronym sweep for the meeting.
And so one of the things, as we were talking to some of our service providers, it began to feel like in some cases, a successful housing placement could be based on luck. Just because of when somebody is ready to make that step forward, making sure that the system itself is not too complex for them to navigate, but even the service providers and the different program coordinators that are throughout our community, how they can also navigate the system. So the current outcomes presents wrong doors in the sense that either somebody who is ready went to the wrong door at the time that somebody available to them wasn't, or wrong pockets in the sense that the cost saving that comes from housing people isn't necessarily in the same sector that funding is necessary. So for example, if we have cost savings in our justice system or our health system, it's difficult to translate that through getting direct housing supports, say through Oregon Housing Community Services. So just beginning to continue that conversation about how we can centralize where exactly these resources are coming from. In addition to that is multiple programs competing for housing. That was some feedback we got, that oftentimes when an affordable unit comes up online in our community, there are multiple different service providers that are attempting to go after that unit and making it challenging to prioritize in a centralized way for housing placements based on risk or need. And so really we understood that to move this forward and be able to leverage this initial investment through Oregon Housing Community Service Consortium, we needed to understand where we can, from a systems level, fill those gaps in a really rapid way. And so through various research and understanding of best practices throughout the country, we identified a model of what is called a flexible housing subsidy pool as a potential means to invest our OHCS House Bill 5019 money and a way to then leverage additional investments into the future. So can I hand it off to you?
Sure. Yeah, breath break. So this is where we'd like you to really tune in and listen, because we want your feedback. The components of a flexible housing subsidy pool, sort of three main pillars: accessing or acquiring housing units. We need the unit for people. Centralized management of system-wide housing resources, and staff and system capacity. So accessing or acquiring housing units, that first one, for an existing unit, one that isn't built yet, right? Or one that's already built while we're waiting for other ones to be built. Having incentives, engaging landlords, saying, you're a private property owner, but we come with all of this great stuff. Your rent will be paid. This person will have case management and supports. If there's any issues, we will be there. And then looking at options for publicly owned housing. How do we have housing that isn't fair market rent? The centralized management of resources, so we can streamline and prioritize folks and have right fit housing placement, so there's no wrong door. You could come in from any provider as any type of household. And this centralized flexible pool will have resources. So flexible funding, whatever it will take to get this family in. There isn't specific HUD requirements or something else. It's whatever it takes. Is it a moving truck? Is it back rent? Is it first and last month's rent? And then integrating it with existing referral and data systems for appropriate referrals. And so we can evaluate this program. How is it working? Who is it working for? But really looking through the lens of person-centered outcomes. Why isn't it working for some folks and not others, as opposed to just data points?
Julie, is
Yeah,
it possible to talk just a little teeny bit slower? You're really throwing a lot of stuff at us and you're doing it rapidly.
Thank you for the lean in, Carol. I will talk slower. My 80s genetics go fast. Okay, staff and system capacity. Housing navigation and tenancy supports, that's part of our system capacity need. And case management, supporting the person throughout their entire journey. We see oftentimes where a street outreach position is funded, and then that position can no longer support someone once they're in housing. Let me get my mouse back here. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these three. So the accessing and acquiring units, the centralizing of management of our resources, and staff and system capacity, because these are the three pillars that we're working on right now. So first, accessing or acquiring housing units. I don't think this is news to anyone in Benton County, but in case you were tuning in for the first time, Benton County has a vacancy rate that is staggeringly low. That means there aren't open units for people to find and move into. But we do have 400 new affordable units either being built, just opening, or in the pipeline of development. So there is an opportunity to establish great relationships with new property owners. Our funding with House Bill 5019, it's flexible. And in the short term, we can use it while more units are being built. And then, Carol, this was that community feedback we referenced last summer. Our community partners said that property managers and owners, and engaging with them, having the relationships to be able to say, you've got an open unit, I've got a person who needs it, is a huge gap. Because even if we have a person who's ready for housing, ready, has their voucher, they can't find a unit to move into. Again, what is property manager owner engagement? It's talking, it's building relationships, it's connecting with private sector housing to try to end homelessness as a whole community. Those connections with property managers so that we can have really a pipeline to an open unit. Successful partnerships are locally driven and involve ongoing engagement. That is true. I don't need to say that in any other way. So we wanted to share with you what we have been working on. It's a draft right now, but we are, and when I say we, I have to give a huge shout out to Brigida. Were these Brigida's slides? Oh, you gotta elbow me, Brigida, these are your
An
slides.
understanding outside of what I remembered, so.
Did you design it, Rebecca?
No.
I designed it. But I am not the one with the relationships to do outreach. So Brigida, I am sorry, and I will pass you the mic.
Oh, it's all good. We're all a team. So we are engaging Brigida Olson, City of Corvallis Housing Division Manager. We're working with a handful of property managers in the next coming weeks to talk about the flexible housing subsidy tool, getting feedback of what potentially will work and not work, and try to secure additional units so that we can prioritize the folks that we're intending to help house. So that will include both affordable developers and also knowing that we're going to be working with market rate folks too. So this is a big lift, being able to find units and prioritize populations and making sure that we can get them the necessary supports to get housed in a timely way, knowing that a lot of funding that I deal with often is pretty inflexible. And so having a tool that's flexible in nature that can help support the folks where they are, knowing that security deposits will be needed to be paid. There might need to be first and last month's rent, might need to get furniture. There's just a lot of things that normal funding sources don't always have the mechanism to pay for. And Carol.
So my concern is we have a huge number of people who need homes. Some of them are unhoused, but a lot of them are people who are low income. And is there going to be a competition if Hope works on establishing relationships to provide homes for the unhoused people? Then what about the people who are not homeless, but they're looking for a place to live? Maybe they're living with friends, or maybe they're, living in Sweet Home. They want to live in Corvallis. So is there a sense of competition between these groups, or are you talking broadly about both groups? If that question makes any sense.
I'll let the county talk about the contract requirements associated with these funds, because that gets to some of the nitty gritty there.
So this particular program that we're presenting today is very specifically to respond to households in Benton County that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And the Coordinated Homeless Response Office really is, that's the scope of the work that we are working on right now, is people who are experiencing homelessness. And we are aware that there are many other objectives and initiatives at the state level that will engage other different types of community groups and county and city departments to address the overarching housing crisis in Benton County and throughout the state. However, today this presentation is directly focused on unsheltered homelessness, and we will do our part to prioritize the needs based on that.
Well, I get that that what we're talking about today, I'm just looking at down the road, we have a handful of units coming on. And if Hope develops a swift process to move unhoused people in it, then people who aren't as connected to an organization and don't know how to access those homes might be frozen out. And so we might be just creating more unhoused people.
I hear that worry, Carol. I think with the crisis of homelessness, getting people off the street and out of tents is life-saving in a way that looking for a new unit for folks who are housed is a different population of folks. But as far as the work that we're doing right now, it is dependent on this.
We just lost power. Oh, that was scary. Wow. Can folks still hear me?
I just heard a big lightning strike that just hit in South Corvallis, so that might be
It hit here too, girl. It hit here too. The owl, I think has died on us.
Oh, no, it just did a who.
Can you hear us? Yep. So go
It's, yep, you're back. This is 31 folks getting housed is fabulous, and it's not enough, and it's not going to address all the needs in our community. And we need to be working on the entire housing continuum, right? So we need to be building lots of different kinds of units, allowing for the diversity of housing types. We need to be working on eviction prevention and rental assistance. There's just a whole laundry list that needs to be addressed. This is a program that will help, and hopefully we'll be able to build upon that and lessons learned of how we prioritize populations, how we keep them housed, how we give them the community and case management supports to retain housing long-term. So hopefully.
Well, one last thing on this, and I'll let it go, but people who are, like I know people who are sharing homes who have kids who really should be in their own home with the kids. Those people will advance very quickly and become successful people with jobs, and they already have jobs. They just, but when we're talking about the unhoused population, we're talking about a whole group of people we're trying to provide services for. That obviously that's important, and we need to do it. But if I look at where you're going to get the most bang for your bucks, part of me thinks the most bang for your bucks are going to be for those people who are who are already on the ladder, they just need to step up, but they don't have a house, but they have children, and we're just going to perpetuate that child in poverty if they don't get homes. And I'm done with this. You heard my spiel.
Thank you, Carol. I see Andrea and Fred's hands up. But let me respond to Carol's really quickly because we
We can't hear you, Julie.
can't hear us. Give me a second.
It sounds like you're really, really, really far away. We can hear you, but you're miles and miles away.
Guessing the device that
Well, can anybody hear me? This is Fred, Faith, Hope, and Charity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was trying to understand where competition comes in at here when we're trying to house people. And although you said, is that Carolee or Carly? You're saying about competition. You kind of lost me there. But I think overall with this, what you're saying, Rebecca and Julie, that this is really good. It's more avenues that we can do. You have more leadway, so to speak, to put people in house, paying their first months, last month, and I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about, Peg, when you do that, because you help a lot of people like that, and all of that is just a big plus. If you can do that, there's no competition there. You're getting them in a house, you're getting them, off the streets. And the ones that's off the streets, I'm learning that they're being kind of positioned differently. If you're couch surfing, from what I understand, you're homeless. If you're living in your car, you're homeless. So these people need to get in apartments, and if they need help, I don't see where the competition coming in. If we can pay their first month's last, if they're working, first of all. Hopefully they have a job or getting some income in to pay their rents. Did you have something?
Yeah, so, well, from my understanding, this is being designed specifically for the unhoused, so, I don't think we need to worry about the other populations because they already have housing that exists for them. But, I think this is great, this fundable flexing, this is really what we need to help people with barriers, and I'm really excited about this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah. But thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
And I can barely hear you. You sound far away.
Really? Well, there
Yeah, that
is.
is called the hour.
And I've got it all.
Can you touch the mute thing and unmute thing? See there's a.
Well, let's make idle chit chat with Regina and Peggy.
Let's let Andrea go. She has her hand up.
Yeah, it was so stormy I couldn't even hear you guys. It looks like it might continue. Wow. When you're talking about unsheltered homeless, I'm assuming and you guys already got questions from some of us providers about this for the RFP, but when you're talking about focusing on unsheltered homeless, I'm assuming that you're talking about getting people from the street into housing.
As I understand it, and so I'm looking at my county friends who are sort of, maybe they can hear us, but as I understand that.
Is our audio back now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I really appreciate where this conversation is going, and there is still, just to remind people, that this program that we are standing up is part of how we are utilizing the funds that OHCS is distributing. So there are specific requirements tied to that funding. The Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool program is going to be established to be able to leverage multiple different funding sources. So it is a lot of complexity of what we're presenting tonight, but specifically the funding opportunity that we have right now to distribute in our community through the flexible housing subsidy pool has the requirement that that funding will be used for the definition unsheltered homelessness. And so OHCS is working with each continuum of care to establish specific policies about when and how that particular housing status needs to show up in somebody's history to be eligible for this funding. We are currently in conversations with the continuum care, which is the rural continuum care, and Oregon Housing Community Services to get a written policy regarding this. They are aware that this had not been addressed previously, and they are working on it now to address. And it will be very clear in any contracts or any particular program policies related to this funding as it is administered through the flexible housing subsidy pool.
I think put another way too, we are hopeful that we'll get other resources that will be also flexible in nature. And so we have not invented this tool. This is happening around best practices, some in LA, et cetera. And so my hope is this can be the beginning. We're going to always have criteria depending upon funding sources, et cetera. But some might be more flexible than others.
I wanted to provide some context for this too. And I have a lot to say about this because this is basically what we do. We housed 42 folks from shelter last year and used Measure 110 funding, ARPA funding, a lot of different sources of funding to get people into housing, trying to bridge a gap between a few months until they get their Section 8 or they don't have a deposit. CSC has been overwhelmed with deposit requests, and sometimes folks need a deposit right away, and we're able to provide that. And so for a smaller organization like ours to manage those flexible funds, it's been a lot for us to do that. We've been able to do it, but it's a lot. And having the county behind making those contacts with landlords and providing some support in managing funds is really helpful. So that was our feedback to the county of like, hey, can you help us out? We feel like we're doing a big lift here and we could really use some help administratively and just outreach to landlords because they're going to listen to the county more than they're going to listen to CHF. But I would say that it's a little bit of a misunderstanding to think that we're all siloed and we're working with people, and not communicating with each other. We've had multiple meetings with the drop-in center and with Unity. Oftentimes people that are homeless are hitting the drop-in center, CHF, and Unity, and they're working with somebody at all three. Because if you're homeless, it's all about community and connection and where you feel like you're getting support. So it's not as linear. I just want to make sure that you all understand it's not as linear as what you would think, and that I can think of an example of someone who had 3 different staff from 3 different organizations helping them get housed, and they needed all 3 of those people for different reasons. And so I just want to make sure that it's not to continue this idea that we're all working in a silo, because that's not the case.
Thank you, Andrea. And I when we presented those slides about the silos, it was really to identify more of the overarching regulatory framework regarding even the definitions of homelessness. Those create silos in their own right with the funding requirements. And so just really making sure that where we can come in with this investment to try to, what OHCS is calling barrier busters. So when you are creating that community out while doing that work each day, that you have a housing unit available and you have those rapidly deployable flexible dollars when you're able to wrap around the individual. And so that's really the part where we want to, and I think there is some work we can do about being specific. And the phrase silos, I think it's often overused and used to simplify things. So I appreciate that feedback.
Matt, you have been waiting for a long time with your hand up. Do you want to ask your question now or your comment now, or can we continue with the rest of the presentation?
No, you guys go ahead. I was just going to jump in with what Fred was saying, but they kind of got what I was going to say, so we're good.
Okay.
Know the name of the dog.
Oh yeah, and someone wants to know
Yeah,
the name
and
of
the name of the dog. That was also me.
Jaeger, his name is Jaeger.
Yeah.
Is Jaeger gonna be at the next meeting?
He's taking notes from me, so we'll see. It's all how he's
Okay,
being.
I might have to come in person then next time.
Yeah, if you can't see, folks, there's an adorable Aussie in the room with us doing a little sniff test at every corner. If we get distracted, that's why. Okay, we are going to continue to make sure you have all of the information that we can share with you about this before you give more feedback. Your feedback's been wonderful. So this is just an example of the kind of outreach we are doing that Brigida's team is really leading. Do you want to do this one?
Sure.
You want me to?
In addition to that landlord engagement, property manager engagement, and opening up access to units, also the opportunity to centralize coordination. I think we really want to change that phrase from management to coordination, because really, just to reiterate what Andrew was saying, it isn't so much leaning in and providing leadership where there isn't leadership, but just really where we can make those connections to relieve some of the administrative and burden of opening up the opportunity for housing resources and the units themselves. So the flexible housing subsidy pool really relies on key components, and one of them is housing support services. So we all understand that housing navigation is a key component of helping people navigate all the various different services that are necessary to access housing. That includes getting an ID, getting signed up for various different services such as Section 8 vouchers, also the case management, the person-to-person support throughout their entire process, and then street outreach and landlord engagement incentives, as we talked about before. So that housing support services, the flexible housing subsidy pool, like we mentioned, it isn't one sole provider. It is the opportunity to, through whether it be a memorandum of understanding, speed dial, all those different kinds of relationships where we can formalize to be able to make those connections. Because one of the things we have talked about the flexible housing subsidy pool is that we will have dedicated staffing in here, and we'll talk about that shortly, to provide services where a referring program may not have available, or work in coordination with a provider who already has those services for the person. It may be that the person just needs first and last month's rent. The referring provider can provide the case management or the street outreach or the housing navigation, in which case then we can quickly deploy those flexible dollars. But if a referring agency says, well, I also need this person for them to be successful, we also need case management, and we need that housing navigation to follow them throughout their program participation, that's where the flexible housing subsidy will have dedicated staff and contracted out services to bring those services forward if they're necessary. Also, we are already forward thinking about how to locate various different funding sources beyond the state funding that we've gotten for House Bill 5019 to make sure that the services and the capacity that we are building into the flexible housing subsidy pool will be able to continue serving our community beyond the state's investments. So that's that other support that we are bringing with the Coordinated Homeless Response Office through the flexible housing subsidy pool. Mm-hmm. And then, as mentioned before, is those specific units. How can we look at innovative public and private ownership models of actual units, so that when we're providing those rental payment assistance, we can actually find the units to utilize those services. So really, that's sort of the I would call it a very rudimentary graphic to try to attempt to explain this rather complex system. Sure, please lean in.
Okay. So staff and system capacity. We are developing this program, this flexible housing subsidy pool, and it needs capacity. It's people to do the work. So we are building staff capacity at Benton County with 2 positions. They are posted. They've been shared as widely as we can. I will share them again with the HOPE board, but a program coordinator to support this flex pool, to do program referrals, data collection, communications, tracking outcomes, and a housing navigator for direct client support with housing navigation, care coordination, referrals, and housing placement. Then community capacity building. We just released a notice of funding opportunity for community partners to apply for, because we need street outreach and case management as well for this. Connecting, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to add some clarity. Again, what we said in the previous slide, while the notice of funding opportunity is really to identify those specific street outreach and case management components, we understand that both street outreach and case management might have overlapping services that a service provider would necessarily need to be providing people that they're making contact with that fall into things like program coordination and housing navigation. And that's that part that, you know, being able to understand that it's not redundancies, it's actually just making sure that we're able to step forward where there's a need and step back where a partner can come forward with that service. So this isn't saying that street outreach and case management necessarily exclude the services that we are going to be providing with the Benton County staff capacity, but just that they have a reliable source and central point of contact at the county itself for these services.
Good clarification, thanks. So this is the county, no, you're good, cut me off anytime. The county recruitment, I'm including in the PowerPoint, and I'll also email the HOPE board members as well. If you can share that with your networks.
We can back up. Sorry, I wanted to talk a little bit about the intentional placement of where these staff positions will be in the county, because I think
sharing.
yeah,
We can see people, yeah.
One thing that we are really excited about is the opportunity to place the housing navigator position into our existing harm reduction team, which has established really strong connections with our community, both the service providers and those experiencing homelessness, and has a wealth of knowledge and established trust as well. And so we intentionally made that decision that the housing navigator would be placed in that team and also be part of our health navigation team in the health department. So really making sure that that person is in a system and staffing and program model that makes it readily available for them to make connections to other resources as necessary that may expand beyond their direct job description, but will be part of a team that can quickly connect them to other resources as well. And then the program coordination position, understanding how important it is for somebody to be able to have a step back and be able to look at all the different types of housing resources that are available through the community. For example, if we have referral agencies such as our behavioral health department or parole and probation or a community-based organization, where that program coordinator could be that central point of contact to look at, do we have a federal housing assistance program that this person is eligible for, so that we are being good stewards of the funds we have and being able to utilize the flexible dollars where they absolutely need to be reserved for those flexible, emergency, rapidly responding needs of our community. And then accessing those more long-term rental assistances by making sure that we're finding how to prioritize those funding. So developing a funding and housing plan for each individual, and then with that housing navigation and case management support, having the person-to-person guidance of development of the plan that helps people's successful housing placement. So just some clarity about where those positions will live and how we intend them to improve the success of people's housing journey.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right. Okay, so this is the notice of funding opportunities spelled out, and I'll be sure to do that elsewhere. It opened last week and applications are due April 15th. And that is for the street management, the street outreach and the case management and wraparound supports. So if you haven't heard about this yet, there's a link to it right there. Do you want to add anything more to that?
Thank you.
We're good? Okay.
I like street management.
Street management. So here is where we're going to pass the mic to all of you HOPE board members. And here are some questions to sort of ask what we would like to hear your feedback on. Does it make sense how this flexible housing subsidy pool model is connected to all the community feedback that we got on House Bill 5019 about our local needs and gaps? Because we really built this based on the local feedback. How can we improve how we communicate about this program? And Carol, this speaks to your question. How do we make sure folks know about the work that we're doing, how it fills the gaps, and that this program is under development? Is this program understandable? What questions do you have about it? What's not making sense? What is making sense? And if you would like to share, or if it makes sense, how would you interact with this centralized model, for those on the phone who are providers? So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and bring this back up. Yeah, we have Chris, in the room here.
I'm Chris McFarland with Benton County Behavioral Health. I work on the assertive community treatment team. So I work directly with the homeless that are experiencing severe and persistent mental illness and substance use disorder. And I think there might be, I don't think people quite understand the severity of homelessness in Benton County. We are continually out in the homeless camps, both meeting clients and searching for clients everywhere from North Corvallis to Timber Hill, all the way down the south to Willamette Park, all the way over to Philomath, and then east to the river. And it's thought that there are a little over 2,000 people in Corvallis right now on the streets experiencing homelessness. That's a lot of people that need to be housed, that need to get off the streets. And that's a very small percentage that come into and access the Corvallis Drop-In Center. That's a very tiny percentage. It's a wonderful resource, but there are hundreds and hundreds of homeless people that do not come into town to receive any services. They're out in the camps. That's where they are 24/7, 7 days a week. And so figuring out how to reach those individuals and provide the information is going to be challenging because a lot of them don't want Benton County. They don't want people. They fear them. They fear law enforcement coming out and harassing them. They fear getting arrested again, rearrested again. And that cycle continues every day because I have clients that follow that cycle every day in and out of jail for trespassing, and they can't pay their fines to get a failure to appear. They go back in jail. All of those are huge barriers, as we all know, to getting any housing in Corvallis, Benton County, and the state of Oregon. There is a wonderful resource in Philomath, Harriet Hughes, who owns many properties and has a very low barrier in her housing. And her model, I think, should be one that could and should be replicated here in Corvallis. Right now she houses a little over 200 people that cannot receive housing in any other standard apartment or private opportunities, because she will take anyone with any credit, with any criminal charges. It's even lower than low barrier. It's pretty much no barrier. She doesn't do credit checks. She does.
1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Folks at home, can you still hear us? We just had our lights flicker. Yes, thank you, Peggy. Continue.
So she doesn't do credit checks. She doesn't do background checks. She bases it all upon a person-to-person interview with the individual that needs housing. It's just, again, that model I think could be replicated here. But as we all know, NIMBY is a real big thing here in Corvallis and Benton County. Everyone speaks that they want the housing, but no one wants it in their backyard. No one wants it in empty fields behind their house. It is a real problem here in Corvallis. We speak highly that we need it, but no one wants it near them. And that, to me, again, it's fairly hypocritical of Corvallis wanting to provide housing, but not wanting it in around them. And then I just have a question, of the properties that are coming online, what defines affordable housing? Because affordable to a person that makes 60 grand a year is way different than a person that relies on $720 Social Security a month, and that's all their income. They receive $34 a month for food stamps. So I'm curious as to what defines affordable housing.
Yeah.
And
I have
then,
someone who's gonna answer. Do you want?
yeah, please.
First, Brigitte. Housing for the 400 some odd units. She might not still be on here, but it depends on the developer and the development and what kind of financing they got for it. But there's a certain amount of units that have to be of a certain area median income, like 30%,
Yeah.
60%. But I don't have the breakdown, but I know that Brigitte does, and I can send it to you.
So I know it, and that's how we are able to house some of our clients is there's several apartment complexes around town that have that kind of set 30%. But as we know, those are sometimes a 2-year waiting list to get our clients into. And then I do have a resource. I had a meeting at the Monarch House last week with a Michael Couch of Crossroads Community in Lebanon. Yeah. And he is looking to bring funding into Benton County, but he has to be invited. And he does grant writing, and they have done 2 properties in Lebanon and 2 over in Lincoln County, directly several hundred units. And so this might be another opportunity to increase funding here in Benton County they build directly transitional housing for the homeless and also those to transition out of group homes, because right now we have multiple individuals that need group homes and there's only 1 bed in the entire state of Oregon that is open in all of the group homes. And so that is another need of trying to move people out of group homes so the homeless can access group homes to get stable and then can get into transitional housing. Help the homeless get into stable housing and then to stay in stable housing.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a whole lot.
It is a lot. And that's a lot of different program components of accessing those units or owning them in some sort of public model. And then having the street outreach to find the folks who are not connected to any system. And then this flexible kind of funding for people who do have $200 a month to pay towards housing. Thank you for that. We've got some board members with hands up. Alice, I see you. And then hold on a second. There's a couple folks. Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
I wanted to underline Andrea's contribution about not working in silos, because my experience has been that we have worked with Housing First on 3rd Street. We've worked with the Drop-In Center. We've worked with Chris Gray of Benton County Harm Reduction, and we've worked with Faith Hope and Charity. So we're working together. And it works better for us because one of the things that, one of the spaces that Matt was talking about, people who are not coming into the drop-in center get referred to us by Chris Gray. So we have seen people who are living much more isolated, or they're in groups, but they're not connected to the city. So that is a big help. But my concern is we now have 4 respite care beds in Corvallis. 2 of them are going to be destroyed when Housing First tears down the motel. And so I'm concerned about, because we don't have the funding to buy property at this point. We're too new. We're just trying to get operating funds. And so my concern is how are we going to take care of the really desolate and ill people, of whom in our population of houseless people, let's say 559% are medically fragile. And on any given day, 20 people could use a bed immediately. We saw 20 people over the whole year. That's how many people we took care of and found beds for. So it's a big issue. It's a community health issue as well as a housing issue. I wonder if I could have any feedback from all the rest of you. Thank you.
I can answer a little bit. So Benton County is currently in the process of building a 24-hour crisis center that's downtown. That's scheduled. I think Damien Sands is on here. He might be able to offer a little bit more, but I think it's scheduled to be completed summer of 2025. And that will not have respite beds per se, but it will offer opportunity for those that are struggling, need sheltering immediately, and can stay in chairs in the crisis center for an extended period of time. And so it is going to be kind of a really beneficial stopgap, because you're right, we don't have enough respite beds. And those are typically, the one at community outreach is kind of high barrier. And the one at Janice House is a low barrier, but 2 respite beds in the whole county is not nearly enough. So you are correct. But this crisis center will be able to offset that a little bit. And like I said, Damien Sands, who's I think on here, he might be able to offer a little bit more input.
That's 18 and over. You should make that clear as well for that, the unit that they're building down there. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
trying to-
yes, correct. It will be for 18 and older. But I know Jackson Street Youth Shelter is looking to expand their footprint as well, which is for under 18.
Yeah.
And
And
to
that's
directly,
not the barrier.
so to directly relate that question regarding respite in the context of the flexible housing subsidy pool and the feedback we're seeking here today, it is intended that we will be looking at different kinds of housing units, specifically whether that is acquisition of the units or partnerships with property managers and property owners to identify the necessary units for the various levels of need for people who are being referred to the flexible housing subsidy pool. So we are already in active conversations with our city partner, City of Corvallis, to understand what potential investments can be identified to, or even partnerships with our, as Brigitte talked about, that engagement with landlords, to identify units to be able to refer people to, because we know we need an entire continuum of various housing models to be able to effectively, flexibly, and rapidly serve people.
We're working on it, Alice. We're working on adding more units that can be used for respite. We hear you loud and clear. We know it's a huge need. Matt, you've had your hand up for a while. Did you want to chime in?
Yes.
Were you talking
thank
to me?
you.
Did you want an update or what you want my
Alice?
feedback?
No, I'd love your feedback on the flex pool. We're working on more units that could be used for medical respite, but I'd love to go over to Matt because he's been waiting for a while, and then we can come back to you, Alice, okay?
Oh, I'm done. I'm done. I'm good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, for the two positions you were talking about, they seem very like in the now customer focused positions, but is there going to be any like space for those folks to as they kind of start to build up experience, work with people who are working on more longer term goals to like increase housing availability and other stuff like that going forward?
A really good question. Right now, the funding opportunity forces us to advertise these positions as limited duration because they are tied to this House Bill 5019 funds, which is limited duration funding. The goal generally around the flexible housing subsidy pool is to continue to innovate and evolve as necessary based on our community's need. So all team members to that flexible housing subsidy pool will be part of participating in long-term solutions and the day-to-day response to homelessness. I hope that's not a too big of a vague response to you, but the idea is that we want to be able to continue to innovate and be flexible. And so people who are actively engaging in the implementation of the flexible housing subsidy will be providing the necessary feedback to keep making sure that our program is being responsive to the community that it's serving.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Other input from H.O.P.E board members about this model, how we communicate it. Does it make sense? How would you interact with it? Anything along those lines?
Look at you.
I think the communication's the tricky part. You know, in the housing committee, we talk at the League Housing Committee, the League of Women Voters Housing Committee. There we go. We talk a lot about, we all seem to be talking to each other, and we're all very sensitive to the needs of unhoused people needing homes. But when you go out of our immediate circle, there's just not a lot of information about how serious the issue is and how many people there are and what's being done about it. So there's a real vacuum out there that I'm not sure. The league has talked about setting up meetings with, you know, Kiwanis clubs and Elks. And why is Julie crawling on the floor?
I gotta plug in my laptop so we don't lose the feed. Just forget to.
I love it when you guys stand up. You're all like Rebecca's wearing jeans and Julie's wearing casual pants. I mean, it's a typical Zoom call. Anyway, how have you thought about reaching out to the community beyond, you know, the providers and the people who already care? Have you ideas about that, or a dog and pony show you want to go out to different groups with, or what's the thinking?
We do the talking. Yeah, we've done that. No, go ahead.
Well, no, so right now we are really focusing on working with the service providers who will be you know, a participant of the flexible housing subsidy pool, and for the key community partners such as our property managers and landlords to really understand what all these connections are. We are developing communications around that, and we are actively working with our health communications team to provide resources to the greater community on our website. As you can appreciate, the amount of information we provided tonight was quite a lot. So it's going to take time to make sure we create consumable and accessible information about this program. And we continue to engage the larger local planning groups that were part of those 2 meetings last summer with updates around this. But we are already actively talking with our health communications team to work on a specific plan about the flexible housing subsidy pool, but also just the larger scope of work for the coordinated homeless response office and the system, and the continued work of our H.O.P.E advisory board. So there are a lot of things in the works right now, and certainly any feedback that we gather here will definitely inform that.
So maybe you don't need to go out to the greater community. What you're talking about is sort of a tiered level of communication. First, you start with a smaller group, and then you go out to this group, and you go out to. So you're talking to H.O.P.E, then talking to. I guess the question I'm trying to get to is, what are you wanting this communication to accomplish? What's the point of it? And I don't mean that in a frivolous way, but rather, you know, you want to meet with the property managers so they understand the breadth of the issue and they're sensitive to what they can do in terms of finding places. And then you want to keep continuing working with the governmental issues so they understand. But in terms of the community at large, the kind of people that aren't very involved in homelessness, is that a group that needs to be approached or not? I mean, maybe they don't.
So that's the conversations we're having with our team, our communications team, who specializes in this very particular type of communication. So the question is, who are the audiences? And that's what today we've identified that this is one audience that we're presenting the information. So far, the purpose of this, we've actually, I think we've accomplished the purpose. We've got some great feedback here tonight about how we're presenting the flexible housing subsidy pool, how it acknowledges the work in our community, where it works, where it potentially could place other barriers. And also the feedback about what you're presenting right now is, who are the other audiences? How do we have to, you know, change the types of language that we use to talk about this for those audiences? So tonight, this communication is giving us the feedback as far as program development and who we potentially need to talk to next.
I would also add, we need time to do the work, right? And so articulating what this new tool is, working with community partners, having successes, being able to talk about the successes, I think is really important. So getting feedback through the H.O.P.E board and engagement is critical. Letting our community know what we're up to is also important. And we also need to just get some of this work done so we can get folks through more stable housing opportunities.
Can I chip in here?
Go ahead, Alice, and then after you, there's another H.O.P.E board member who'd like to chime in.
Okay, so I wanted to say that I have a database of all the churches and organizations on my computer so that I can send a message to the churches, I can send a message to the organizations. And to me, that's a very successful way of communicating. And you can get a lot of information into a message. You can also give them information they are not aware of. So that's one tool that is very helpful. The other thing is some of us met with Representative Singer Saturday morning and talked almost exclusively about housing issues with her. So I think reaching out to the people who are in Salem as well as the people in Washington, and I have connected with all my reps and Congress people about housing. And I really do see that it's a federal problem eventually. It's got to be assumed by the federal government because we struggle to fill a tiny patch in each community, and it's too big for the city, it's too big for the county, too big for the state. And that's true in every state in this country. So I'm just hoping that we can keep pushing politically and keep communicating with the community at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Barbara and then Andrea.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Julie, Rebecca, Brigitte, this is such a heavy lift. You're not going to make everybody happy. But this is a very sound plan. I was looking at the positions that you had posted and the housing navigator, 41,000 to 54,000. My first thought is, well, they can't live in Corvallis. And here we are talking about, housing in Corvallis. And because I work at OSU, I do hope, and I want to encourage you to reach out to OSU, because part of the problem that we have in Benton County and especially Corvallis is there is no cap on enrollment. And you are going to be competing in the flexible housing subsidy pool with whatever the landlords can get from students. So yeah, there is no easy answer to that, but until we address that elephant in the room, I see this problem continuing. Thank you.
You're right about that, Barbara. And I know that the relationship with OSU and the conversations with them are critical. They do have a student housing development almost built on Monroe almost across from the library, which is exciting news. Andrea.
Graduate student housing.
Any student housing.
Again, just from the provider perspective, I just want to reiterate again, and you guys already know this, but whenever large entities like the county decide to make moves like this, it makes the rest of us nervous because we've been working really hard on developing some infrastructure and doing this work. And I just want to encourage you and the rest of this group too to hold accountable for this, that we're doing our best to work together and not replicate any wheels, and to serve our community in the best way we can, and recognize that there's a lot of infrastructure here to be built on, and ask for help too, because we've got some of those relationships built already and have done some of this stuff. So, please, reach out to the providers for advice and ask us what we need. And I'm telling that to you folks that already know that, but to the rest of the H.O.P.E committee too, because it's very important to have good coordination and relationships all around. So.
Agreed. Thank you, Andrea. And just to reiterate, this is being pursued because of feedback from folks like you, Andrea, of, hey, I've got a person, Dan Easdale has, they've got their voucher, they're ready to move in, but there is not a single unit. Would you please get some landlords to rent to us? Or COI is saying, we've got a family, they've got the unit, they have $8,000 in back rent. Nobody can pay that. That's where the flexible funding comes in. So this was really built with your feedback in mind. So I appreciate that about communicating and listening to our providers. And Andrea, your hand is still up. Did you want to continue? Don't let that Dan Easdale go. So Matt Easdale on the board here is related to Dan, which is where that comment comes from. Jessica.
So
Well, first of all, the slides, do those go up on the website at some point?
They'll be up in a week,
Okay, cool.
and I can email them directly tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you. So as someone who doesn't have like a background in what this board does at all, nothing relating to housing, don't even know if I'll ever own a house, like kind of a thing. I would appreciate knowing, like on the communication part of it, having some sort of distilled graphic or something. And I know that you have that draft paper for us to look at, but obviously we can't like look at that now. But I find that figures of some kind would be really helpful. And from a city councilor perspective, just not even really understanding like how I can help, like how I can connect, like who can I talk to try to bring them to the table for like providing affordable housing or do I just send them to you? So
those are great questions. We don't have all the answers yet. We're still building the house, so we can't make the real estate flyer yet. That shows all the pretty rooms. My feedback that I have seen, elected officials really leverage their positions would be to advocate to our state and federal elected officials and get involved that way, as far as supporting a program like this and getting more funding at the local level. But the other questions I'll need to ponder. Hope board members, do you have input for Jessica's question? It's a good one. Thank you.
I kind of figured that might be something that the planners would talk about with potential developers, but like, I don't know how, if we're allowed to like recruit in a way. Like, I don't know how that works. So.
And you're talking about affordable housing developers?
Yeah.
That's really a Chris Workman role, and Brigitte, do you want to chime in, please?
So I was wondering, like, city planner, city.
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk offline, but certainly, we reach out to a lot of different nonprofit or profit affordable housing developers and in trying to figure out how we can increase our supply of housing and affordable housing. So any chance I get, I try to help think about where we can help make the next project come to fruition. Right now, we have the 400 units in our pipeline here in Corvallis. Happy to work in partnership with other communities across, Benton County to talk about what we've done and try to be really thoughtful about the timing of which we have local resources that can leverage state and federal resources too. So it's complex. I would say this is, I've been thinking about home and affordable housing for almost 2 decades, and there's more money than I've ever seen in my career at the state right now. And so helping position our community is really important for the next affordable housing development is critical.
Thanks, Brigitte. Couple things in the chat of the Housing Alliance working on their budget requests. Thank you for sharing that, Peggy. Alicia, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but you're here on behalf of Bruce with the healthcare perspective. Did you want to chime in on any of this, or no? That's okay if you don't.
No, right now we are still waiting for our guidance and everything you were saying about all the rules and the silos of regulation. Of course, when we get into healthcare and the comment earlier about it being a federal problem because we have, because it's Medicaid, it's all federal money as well as state money and all of that. I wish I had better information for you all about what our housing benefit is going to look like this fall. It's starting to roll out in November, and we don't have a clear guidance as to what exactly we're going to be able to pay for and how.
Join the
but we definitely want to be a big part of this. I definitely want to look at the respite bed question because we do have funding available for things like that. So please do continue to use us as a resource for those spaces where we can fit in. I absolutely recognize that housing is a health issue, but the healthcare system is we are so far behind on getting engaged with housing in any meaningful way, so.
Keep showing up though.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other board members, feedback or questions? Does this model make sense to you? How would you engage with it? Any other feedback to give us as we are in this development stage? Because we really are developing the program right now. We haven't rolled it out yet. We haven't hired staff yet. Just wanted to make space for anybody to share. All right, well, we will move on then. We only have a small bit left of your agenda. And let me try to remember what it was. Okay. We have some community updates. April Holland, our health department director, can't be here tonight. So I am sharing the update on her behalf. That the severe weather emergency response and sheltering specifically for our folks who are unhoused, we know that it needs work. We know that we need to improve. We learned so much as a community, city, county, providers, healthcare from the ice storm, because it was pretty unprecedented for most folks working in this area. And so we're working on it. City, county, providers, health, we are working on it a lot. And there will be a more comprehensive update in October. But we learned a lot from our providers about the needs and the gaps with sheltering, food, transportation with a weather event like that. So rest assured that we're putting in a lot of time on it, even if we don't have an update to share tonight. You want to share the second bullet point? You're the one who told me about it.
Necessarily ready for that, and it might add to the
That's it.
complexity of all the information. Just to let
Just
you
a
know
happy
that
thing.
we are aware that 2.5 million has been awarded to Benton County to support acquisition of capital to support our housing goals in Benton County related to the coordinated homeless response offices.
And that's all we know. Like there's nothing more that goes.
Right, and I guess we talked so much in so much detail about our homelessness response, and then to say, oh yeah, so just, we're working on it, I guess is what the appropriate response to any questions regarding that particular update.
Yeah, but brand new positive information that we got a line item from the state specifically for housing capacity.
Great carrot to dangle.
Yes. Yes. Did you want to say something? Like
No, just come back in May.
Yes, yeah, hopefully we'll know more going forward. That is literally all we know right now. I wanted to save space, Peggy, in case you had an update on any continuum of care stuff. Did you want to share anything?
Sure, I will. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'm just going to apologize in advance that something about my lighting frequently makes it look like I'm on the witness protection plan. So I apologize in advance for any kind of weird lighting going on. But as far as continuum of care, so the official notices that CSC is representing Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln County in forming a tri-county continuum, and has been issued to HUD and to the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care. They've acknowledged receipt of that notice, and some CSC representatives have a meeting next week with HUD Portland Field Office and HUD Regional Office folks who will begin the conversation with us to verify that we have an HMIS system, verify that we have a coordinated entry system, verify that we have plans for how we're going to begin to put this all together, and then to begin the conversation about how any funding that exists that will belong to the Tri-County Continuum, specifically that will need to come out of the ROC, will be sorted out, how they will split out some of the information that's currently in their database for the ROC, and segregate it so that it is specifically assigned to Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties. And what will be important about that is that in future years, as we have point in time counts, it'll give us a baseline number to begin with. So that's what's happening now. I'm still trying to recruit for a position for the person who will really do this work to stand up the continuum and support that. In the meantime, I'm doing what needs to be done to keep things moving forward. But once we get somebody on board, it will begin moving forward a little more quickly.
Okay. Carol, you have a question? Carol Butcher, do you have a question?
Could you go back to the slide that you had about?
This one?
I don't know what the severe weather emergent, excuse me, response is. Is it a plan, or is it, are we saying that when November comes, we're going to have full-time shelter? I'd like some clarity on what that is.
I'll just jump in. It's Rachel McEnany. I mean, there's a quote of every disaster, emergency, or crisis that you face informs how you deal with the next one. So in after-hour reports with emergency management and our partners, we can reconstruct what went wrong and where were the gaps and where was the miscommunication. And it's not time for finger pointing, but it is about building a plan. So I think that if April Holland was here, that plan needs to be built for that next ice storm in particular, because that's how you develop standard operating procedures and whatnot. So it is being worked on. I know that they have probably at least monthly meetings, and a lot of people are being brought to the table.
Chris McFarland, I sit on the emergency operations center.
Well, that's really a plan. I'm just wondering what happens when the weather gets cold and we need 24-hour shelter for the, what, if that's, somebody's working on that, or usually what happens is all of a sudden it happens to be November and somebody goes, oh my God, it's raining outside and we don't have a place for people. So this.
Carol, I'm a member of the Emergency Operations Center, and we have monthly meetings to address this very fact. And we have contracts with multiple churches in the community to provide immediate responsive shelters during ice storms, during smoke, during the wildfires, and during when the temperature reaches, I think it's over 90 degrees, they open their doors. And so we are looking again to better communicate, to be able to access those resources quicker, as well as provide the resources within the shelters, food, cots, electricity, as well as accessing not just the homeless, but those that are highly just a vulnerable population that might not have the resources during like the ice storm. This ice storm was kind of unprecedented because people couldn't drive in it to access the homeless, the unhoused. And so we, as part of the Emergency Operations Center, it involves entities from all of Benton County, from the city to the CERT teams to first responders to the sheriff and CPD, and everyone comes together every month to try and figure out how to make the next emergency run a lot smoother than the last emergency. And so we're doing the best we can with the limited resources and availabilities we have to be able to house, kind of at the drop of a hat. This ice storm, we didn't know was going to happen. It kind of happened overnight. We got hit hard with it. And thankfully, the faith community is willing to open up their doors to those that are unhoused in this type of situation.
Thanks,
Well, I'm not talking emergency. I'm talking just regular. In the wintertime, we have the men's shelter. We have certain other shelters, the women's shelter. But there's always been an issue of when the hours are open, when people can come. And it's clear that this is a plan about emergencies. And I was wondering if it also had to do with just providing shelter in the wintertime, not during an emergency. It's just cold. And then
So when it gets down to a certain temperature, I think it's below 30 degrees.
I'm not talking about that. I understand that part, but it's cold if you're an older person and you're on the street and it's raining out and it's 40 degrees, it's cold. You don't need to be below 30. But anyway, this is not the conversation to have, so I'll let it go.
Thank you. We don't have an update about that particular topic tonight. When we said severe weather emergency response, it really is only those severe activation nights that rise to or fall to a certain threshold. That's the planning that's happening now. And I don't have a good response for you about all other sheltering during the winter right now.
That's good. That's good. I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
Okay. Just a one sentence update that the strat plan was approved and submitted to OHCS. Do you want to say anything more about that?
You said the one sentence, yeah. That is, as we talk about, you had mentioned about, graphics and or even communications that we are working on right now. And you asked kind of like, how do you refer people to help? I think just becoming more and more knowledgeable about where these resources are to build that community awareness, with your community now as part of the coordinated homeless response system. I think as we start to get this content out into the community, that's right now I see the real opportunity for helping by just distributing through your resources.
Communicating, building relationships.
What is the OHCS?
Oh, I have another acronym. Thank you, Chris.
Oregon Housing Community Services.
Thank you.
They're the state entity that has dispersed funds for a lot of the stuff that we're working on.
Awesome, thank you.
And so we did a 5-year strategic plan and submitted it to them in January.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Just a reminder for folks of our new county website. So I included a lot of updated links about where people can find stuff. Our signatures and our emails are updated now too. And there's a lot of central information for you, Jessica, for everybody else, about what goes on with H.O.P.E. But then also the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, our projects and our progress, and you can sign up for the e-newsletter, their social media. And I included again this 4-entity logo because that is our Coordinated Homeless Response System involvement from those 4. Okay, I'm going to end the slideshow.
Maybe kind of leaning into the fact that we are convening the first meeting of 2024 under that new structure of the Coordinated Homeless Response System. And we have people that are representing leadership from all those different partners. And I just think that if we can just take a moment to acknowledge where we've come. I mean, we have Philomath representing, we have, well, Peggy, you've been representing for a while, but under this new structure, and then our county administrator here too, to directly show that leadership support to the great work that this advisory board has been doing for many years and to keep moving that forward under the Coordinated Homeless Response System structure.
Thank you, H.O.P.E. board members. Any other feedback or questions about this? Anything we missed? And please feel free to reach out to me or Rebecca, anyone on the team, if you have thoughts after this meeting of, oh, I wish I had asked about how this worked. Please, this is still being created. Carol, do you have a last question? I can hear you, Carol. Your hand's raised.
Okay, I think it's really impressive. It's taken us a long time to get to this point, and congratulations.
I never thought I'd hear that from you, Carol.
I know.
Applause. That
I
makes
thought I'd give you a surprise at the end.
Thank you. My heart is singing. Barbara, how about you?
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, just wanted to give a quick update for the housing data harmonization project. We did finally get some numbers. We're still looking at them. Paulina Kaiser at Samaritan Health Services, myself, and Mark Edwards at OSU and the Oregon Policy Analysis Lab. But we hope to have something to the board by the next meeting.
Thank you, Barbara. And just so I'm referencing for folks who might be new to this topic, this is looking at data from our homelessness system and data from our healthcare system and trying to cross match so we see an individual and how they are utilizing both systems to look at sort of cost, utilization, frequency. And Barbara has been a huge, hugely involved H.O.P.E board member on that because of her data background. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see what comes of it, Barbara. It's been a couple of years in the making.
It has been, yeah. The hardest part is the data sharing part. That took almost a year.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Seeing no more hands raised, we can end your H.O.P.E meeting early, and thanks to everybody for being here and all the updates you shared. We will see you in May. There is no meeting next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
You got it. There's emergency on me. You can't. It's just a electro storm.
This guy, I know.
He says it's dinner time.
I need puppy therapy.